For this problem, we want to solve this quadratic equation by completing the square. And the first part is asking us to determine what number we add to both sides of the equation in order to make the first two terms a perfect square. It's also saying to type our answer as an integer or perhaps a fraction, so I think that will be relevant for this problem. All right, the idea was we focus on the number that is in front of the x, which is -7. And we saw that if you take that number and you divide it by 2, that number shows up in the process of completing the square. That is not the value that you add to both sides. There's actually a second step. And that second step is to take the number and square it. It doesn't matter that it's a fraction. The process is the same. Squaring a negative makes it positive. 7 squared is 49, and 2 squared is 4. So this is what they want for the first part of this question. When they say type in a simplified fraction, we want to enter in this. So they're asking for 49/4. Okay, the next part is to actually complete the square on this equation. Let's see what that's going to look like. We take x squared minus 7x, and I'm going to put a space after the 7x, where I'm going to add in 49/4. Then I'll put plus 6. And on the other side of my equation, again, I'll leave a space to add this number to both sides. So what we're doing is we're taking 49/4 and adding it to both sides of the equation. It looks kind of like a mess, but these three terms should now be a perfect square. So I'm going to set that up. I'm going to say I'll open up some parentheses, and I'll put in a square to represent I have a perfect square. I'll copy down the plus 6, and on the other side of my equation, I think I'll leave it as just 49/4. So the question is, well, what is the perfect square? What here would square to give me these three terms? Well, you have to have an x, because x squared would take me to x squared, so I'll put an x here. Second, I know I have to have a minus. That's the only way you can get a negative middle term, so it has to be negative. And then what's the actual number? It's a fraction, and it's actually this, 7/2. And to see why this would make sense, if you double -7/2, doubling would cancel the 2 in the denominator, leaving you with 7. If we square this value, squaring the negative makes it positive, squaring the numerator is 49, and squaring the denominator is 4. This is what it looks like to complete the square if the number in front of the x happens to be an odd number. Okay, but from this point forward, I think we have everything we need to solve the equation. We're just going to have to use fractions to do it. Step 1 will be to subtract 6 from both sides of my equation. I'll then take the square root of both sides, and then I'll have to deal with this -7/2. So I'll subtract 6 from both sides of my equation. This gives me x minus 7/2 squared is equal to, okay, so that's 49/4 minus, and I need a common denominator. The common denominator is going to be 4. So if I multiply the top and the bottom by 4, I get 24/4. So I got to simplify this thing. That's x minus 7/2 squared is equal to, and if I subtract the numerators, 49 minus 24, I get 25. 25/4. The next step is to take the square root of both sides. I'll take the square root of the left, and I'll take the square root of the right. What happens is, on the left, you're left with just x minus 7/2. And on the right, if you square root this fraction, the square root of 25 is 5, and the square root of 4 is 2. So this reduces to 4/2. I'll just note that there's two solutions, so I have to put positive and negative. So we're getting really close. Let's complete this problem by, and I'll put my work over here. We're solving x minus 7/2 is equal to plus or minus 5/2. And we're going to get this by adding 7/2 to both sides. these are my two solutions. One is going to be x is equal to 7 halves plus 5 halves. If I use the positive 5 halves, my other solution is going to be x is equal to 7 halves minus 5 halves. Well, let's see, I have a common denominator of 2. 7 and 5 is 12. And 12 over 2 is 6. Likewise, for these two fractions, I'll do 7 minus 5, which is 2. And 2 over 2 is 1. These are the solutions to my equation, 1 and 6. To enter this in my lab, you'd have to enter it in here. So you'd first put 1. So it would look like this when you enter it in. You'd have a curly bracket, 1. You then type comma 6. The curly brackets are already there, and this would be the way to express the answer for this problem.